Hello folks, Darrel Smith from South Dakota again. Last video I made was about my first phase of the flight training for becoming a Naval Aviator. We had lived in Pensacola, Florida. A couple of things I could mention about Pensacola that would give you some sort of indication of how we lived. Glenda got a job. She had worked at Metropolitan Life Insurance Company in Memphis, Tennessee, and when she got to Florida, she found out that there was an office there, and she went to work doing exactly the same work she had done in Memphis. Her boss lived nearby and picked her up and brought her back every day from work. We lived on Perdido Bay, which is a big bay, and we discovered it had a lot of crab in it. So someone told us chicken necks was a good way to catch them. We got some chicken necks and string, and we would tie the string around the chicken neck, toss it in the water, and hang on. The crab, once they found the chicken neck, would start to drag it away, and the string would grow taut. We could pick it up, but these are tenacious little guys, and they would hang on even out of the water, and so we'd lift them out of the water and over a bucket and make them fall off and throw the chicken neck back in again. Now, we had 3 or 4 in the bucket when our landlord walked by, and she said, "Oh, I see you're crabbing." She said, "Boy, they're good to eat." And we were shocked. We'd never seen a crab, and certainly had never tasted one. I cannot remember to this day if we actually tried to eat those crabs. Glenda was afraid of the water. Perdido Bay would get completely flat sometimes, and so she couldn't swim and was afraid of the water. But we walked out where the water was about waist deep, and she gradually got comfortable enough that with me holding her underneath her, she would lay back and relax on the surface of the water. And if she could relax enough, gradually I took my hands away, and she learned just to lay there in the water floating. It was amazing. We didn't have a TV. We had enough money. We bought one deck of cards. In the instructions, it told us how to play solitaire. So we passed the card deck back and forth playing that game. If we wanted a snack of any kind, popcorn was our go-to. It was the cheapest thing we could get. So that's it. Some of the stuff that went on in Pensacola on our first house we ever lived in. So my flight training went okay, and I was able to be awarded jets, and jet training at that time was in Meridian, Mississippi. So we packed up Glenda's Ford and pulled a U-Haul and this to Meridian. We found a trailer for rent in somebody's backyard, and Glenda did not have a job there. She became my support system and the perfect wife, and I needed support. There was a young woman that she became acquainted with, and this lady had had a baby just beginning to learn to walk, and we enjoyed that little girl, and that may be the reason for our reasoning. Some way we decided that we might want to try a child of our own. Glenda got pregnant almost immediately. What were we thinking? We'd only been married and living together maybe 6 months, and my job was future and job were who knows where I was going from here. It was very unknown, but we were pregnant and we were happy about it. The training in Mississippi was the same as in Pensacola. We had a half day of classroom work and a half day onto the flight line. Our initial flights were just fam flights. You'd go out and get familiar with the airplane. We'd pre-flight it, take off, do some maneuvers, come back and do some landings. I can remember my first flight, I was in the front seat and the instructor's in the back, and he said, "Watch this," and he just pulled the nose up just a little bit and just rolled that airplane, an aileron roll. He said, "Okay, you try one," and I did. It's pretty much a thrill to do that. Training went pretty good. We when we got a few hours under our belt, we were more comfortable with the airplane. The instructor told me, I'd been briefed, it had been briefed, told me to pull off the runway at some outlying field. There were no buildings there, just a strip of runway strip, landing strip. And he got out of the airplane and gave me a little salute, and I closed the canopy, it's an electric canopy, and taxied onto the runway, ran up the power, and the airplane slowly at first started to accelerate. In proper time, I eased the nose up, and it became airborne, just like it had done with the instructor in the back seat. I left as instructed. I left the aircraft in the landing configuration. I had the wheel down and the flaps. So I made a circling approach and returned to the other end and landing. And with my first solo landing in a jet. And I'll remember that picture out of the cockpit, the runway out and stretched out in front of me, and the green grass of Mississippi at that time. I was walking down the hallway in the training building down at the flight line, and I was in flight suit, and I got to the door of the scheduling office. I put my hand on the door frame and leaned in, and my goal was to look at the chalkboards on the wall there and find out when my next briefing and next flight was scheduled. At that moment, someone said President Kennedy had been assassinated. They say that just about everybody remembers exactly where they were when they heard that news. And I do, I remember it. It's been a long time ago. I'd never been deer hunting, and I had joined a gun club, and there was a deer hunt planned for the very next morning. We didn't know how to act after our president had been killed. We made a lot of phone calls back and forth and trying to say what's proper and what's not proper. We finally came to the conclusion that no matter what we did, the outcome was the same. It would not change one thing or another. So we went deer hunting. Before daylight, we were put along a fence every 100 yards or so, along of a rental, the leased land that the Navy had leased. Down in Mississippi, the underbrush is real thick, and it would be almost very difficult to walk through it. So it's legal in Mississippi to use dogs to make the deer move around so that you might get a shot. They use beagles. Beagles are noted for making a lot of noise, but actually going real slow. They're not much more than a walk. So nothing happened for a long time. You standing around lazy, half drowsy, and all of a sudden I heard something big. It sounded like coming through the woods. Sure enough, 2 white-tailed bucks with big antlers came running very near me. I didn't have time to think. I put the gun up and fired at the bigger buck. In Mississippi, the legal hunting gun is a shotgun, and it's with buckshot, and that's what I used. The deer didn't slow down, neither one of them, but then I heard a noise in the brush that sounded like, it made me believe my buck was down. Sure enough, he was. So we had that head mounted, and we moved it from one place to another. It ended up in my brother's garage for years, and then a relative, a girl, who had married a man from England, and he was especially enamored by that old deer head. He wanted it. He was excited about it. So that deer head is now in a basement in Memphis, Tennessee, mounted and on the wall. Well, the stress for Meridian, it was more than I had ever experienced in my life. However, I didn't know that even more was coming. An old saying that I said way back when I was trying to make a football team: they can fire me, but I ain't quitting. That was my motto. Glenda and I packed up our VW now. Her Ford was not, it was something wrong with it, but it wasn't big, but we decided to change it for a Bug. And so we put a tiny little trailer behind it and made our way back to Pensacola for gunnery and carrier landings. At that time, all naval aviators were required to make a landing on an aircraft carrier. That's my story for now. Thank you much for listening. Bye.